The Washington Commanders' complete rebuild starts now, and that was made extremely clear at the trade deadline. There was a lot of buzz and the expectation that Washington was going to trade away at least one of their defensive ends, and they ended up trading both. Now, personally, I wanted the Commanders to trade Montez Sweat and keep Chase Young. I think at this point in their careers, we know what Montez Sweat is. He's a very good edge rusher. He's been reliable, but Chase, when he's been healthy, has been a complete game breaker. But of course, he's much more risky. He's had the injury issues. He's even had a down season. So it makes sense why someone would want to keep Chase Young or Montez Sweat over the other. Ultimately, I was very surprised that they traded both, but at the same time, I do get it. This is a full rebuild. You have new ownership. You're tearing this whole thing down. You're probably not going to have the same coach next year. You shouldn't have the same GM next year. This is a complete restart. There's no doubt in my mind that Washington wants to completely clean house, and that was made very clear with this trade. And by the way, they should clean house. Let's start over. Washington ended up sending Montez Sweat to the Bears for a second rounder. Now, there were a lot of talks of a trade of Montez Sweat to the Falcons. He's from Georgia. That made a ton of sense. But then the Bears came in with a high second round pick that's, I mean, almost a late first with how bad Chicago is. And this is an absolutely idiotic trade for the Bears, in my opinion. It's also the second straight season that they've traded away a high second round pick for a player despite being a bottom feeder team. Last year it was Chase Claypool. This year it's Montez Sweat, and they don't even have him on an extension. There's a very real possibility that the Bears just traded a second round pick for a rental in the middle of a bad season. That is one of those idiotic moves that only bad franchises do, and it's one of the reasons why the Bears are a bad team and probably going to stay bad. It's just absolutely stupid. Now, the funniest possible thing is Sweat leaving in free agency and then signing with somebody else in the offseason, like the Falcons, because he doesn't want to go to Chicago. Who would want to be in Chicago? Now, Montez Sweat, he's been very good. He has at least 5 sacks in all of his 5 seasons. He had a career high 9 in 2020, but he does already have 6.5 this season, as many as the Bears do as a team. A lot of people, including myself, really did think that Chase Young would be the highly sought after one, not Montez Sweat, but clearly that wasn't actually the case. Washington preferred to keep Montez Sweat, but they just couldn't say no. It was such a good pick from the Bears to be able to get up there right after the first round. So not only did Washington want to keep Sweat, but they also got the better offer for Montez Sweat. So the NFL and Washington, they preferred Montez Sweat. Clearly their perception of Chase Young's value and Montez Sweat's value are very different. I think a lot of DC fans would have preferred Young, and I think even a lot of regular fans do think Young was the more sought after one, and that's because, you know, he did have all the second overall hype behind him, and he was the defensive rookie of the year. The problem is that injuries are a huge concern with Chase, and ultimately looking back now, it does make sense that Montez went for more. The Commanders shocked everybody when they ended up sending Chase Young away too. He went to the 49ers for a compensatory third. Of course, the Niners, they need all the defensive help they can get, apparently. That is now 5 picks in the first 2 days of the 2024 draft for Washington. That is huge. But also looking at it, they couldn't even get a real third rounder for Chase. It's a compensatory pick, so it's at the end of the round. I think that says a lot about how Chase Young is viewed. I know there are a lot of people probably upset, but look, Chase Young was going to be a pricey franchise tag or was going to want a lot of money. This might make more sense for the future. I don't hate it, and it really does say that Josh Harris is cleaning house, and that's what needs to happen. And I think Ron Rivera is getting real close to his expiration date. He's definitely on the hot seat, to the point where if Washington lost to the 2-6 Patriots, mainly if they lost bad, I think he could get fired, and I would absolutely think that that is the right decision. This team, especially the defense, is not living up to expectations. Ron Rivera is a defensive-minded head coach. You fire Ron, and you fire defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio with him. Let's go ahead and restart this entire thing. Tear it all down, build back up, and at the very least, make Eric Bieniemy the interim head coach. I'd love to get a handful of weeks to just look at him as a head coach. He's a guy that's been talked about as a head coach candidate for years. Obviously, he had a ton of success in Kansas City, learning from Andy Reid, coaching Patrick Mahomes. He's had a lot of experience, and he definitely has transformed Washington's offense in a way, but I just don't think he's the right answer at head coach. Ultimately, when it comes down to the offense, you can't score 7 points against the New York Giants. I think it's that simple. There's been times where I've been very impressed. There's been times where I've been very, very frustrated and concerned with the play calling, and I think that still says a lot. I know offensive line is an issue, but still, you have to be better. This is a 3-5 football team that doesn't look that bad on paper, but they're bad. They're not good. They need to restart. At the very least, if you're looking for something to be happy about, that is that Sam Howell has showed a lot of promise. If you actually look at him versus Patrick Mahomes statistically wise this season, it's been pretty even. No, I'm not going to advocate that Sam Howell or anybody in the league is better than Patrick Mahomes for that matter, but Sam Howell has played well. He's shown a lot of promise. You look at his counterpart, Desmond Ridder, and he's already been benched in Atlanta, and I don't know if he's ever going to get another shot. Meanwhile, Washington fans, even national media, are starting to look Sam Howell's way and think that maybe this kid could be the future franchise quarterback. I don't think he's ever going to be able to be one of those top 5 truly elite quarterbacks. I just don't think that's him. But if he can be a very good quarterback, give you a chance to win games, either he can be your future guy who's solid, or he at the very least gives you enough time to kind of build back up this team, start a bit of a rebuild, and at least give you some kind of a bridge so you can have somebody reliable behind center until you figure out what you want to do in the future. He has been good. I'm not sure if it's good enough for, say, a new coach coming in to not look elsewhere, but it's not like this team is going to be bad enough to get a Caleb Williams or a Drake May. He's got a lot more to prove, but the fact that there are flashes with a 5th round second-year quarterback that didn't really play as a rookie, that's huge. That's promising. At least the new head coach coming in can have something to work with. Now, other than him, this team is led by Terry McLaurin and then Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne on the line. I was interested to see if Washington would have been open to trading John Allen or Daron Payne. Probably not Allen, but having that much money tied up in the interior of the line does worry me a little bit. It kind of hinders how you want to actually carry out this defense, how you want to build it. So I have my concerns there. I don't know how you're going to be able to support them to, instead of having a bunch of money tied up into an edge rusher, now you're going to have some young guy. So that kind of sucks. But ultimately, it's at least good that Washington does have guys to actually start to build around. I'd like to include Cam Curl in there. Go ahead and get him extended. Apparently, there was some interest in him at the deadline. Washington said no. And that's the right call. He's one of those pillars. You have your guys. Let's start building around them. Restart this whole thing. See if Sam Howell is the guy. Fire Martin Mayhew. Get a new GM. Fire Ron Rivera and his staff. And let's just hit the reset button. Let's start over. And selling at the deadline is step 1 of that process.